Okay, in the last video I mentioned the hose length, and here's a good sized pool, and it's got an oak tree right above it, and as you can see the bottom is just spotless from the Polaris, and the hose length is basically reaches the far end of the pool and the shallow end, and that's all you need basically to get good coverage in most pools. Too much Polaris hose will just make it go in circles in this area, so you want to get a good length where it just reaches all the areas in your pool and not too much excess. And here's another example of the hose length on a Polaris. You can see it's connected to the wall right there, and I have it stretched across the deep end, and it reaches the whole pool. And there's no excess hose on this one, so it just does a good job of keeping this pool really clean by having just enough hose to get to the deep end, and of course to get to the shallow end, no problem, because the connector is right there by the steps. Okay, this pool is pretty massive, and this Polaris doesn't quite get the whole pool, but I have it where it gets 90% of the pool. Doesn't quite get underneath that little bridge area, but it gets the main area of the pool, and it keeps it fairly clean. The pool gets a lot of debris. And this is 1 week of debris in this particular pool, so yeah, it does get quite a bit. So the hose just goes basically all the way across to the shallow end. Doesn't quite get that area, like I said, or the area way in the back, but it does a sufficient job. Here's another Polaris hose length. There's the shallow end, and there's the deep end. This one gets all the way full coverage from the connector. A little further from the connector to the deep end, so it's got a little more slack in the shallow end, but it gets the whole pool coverage. And here's another good Polaris length. It just gets right across the deep end, and it'll get all the way to the shallow end. And I have it over there in the shallow end of the pool, and you can see that it gets right where it needs to in the shallow end also. So it's perfect length for your Polaris hose here. On this particular Polaris, I actually have extra hose length because it's got to go around the spa to get to the shallow end. Whoever installed the Polaris line put it on the wrong side of the pool. It actually should have been on this side here. So it has to loop around the shallow end and actually hit the step areas. I had to actually put an extra length of hose on. Get a little more length. So it has a good 6 or 8 feet of extra hose to give it that extra length it needs to get around the spa area right here. And you can see the extra hose length doesn't really affect the Polaris. It actually allows it to get over here in this area that's kind of blocked by this spa poking out of the pool. And that extra hose length helps to get full coverage of this pool. Here's a Polaris in a very small pool, and it just has just enough hose to get to each end of the pool. Throw it back in there, it's making a lot of noise. So yeah, this is a very small little pool, and so it's got a very small amount of hose. That's all it needs sufficiently to get to the deep end and to the shallow end. If I have too much hose on this, it would just get tangled up and pretty much go in circles in a pool this size.